The instant Seraphina's unique, unsuppressed scent washed through the great stone hall, a primal, overwhelming instinct seized King Theron. For 3 centuries his soul had searched, and in that fleeting scent, the mate bond slammed into them both, a shockwave of recognition. He was the most powerful alpha in the Northern Realm, and she was irrevocably his. Ignoring the immediate swell of scandalized whispers from the nobles, Theron moved with focused, silent intent. He found Seraphina near the kitchens, shrinking into the shadowed corner, her pale blonde hair disheveled. His huge, fur-clad presence was terrifyingly close. "Mine," he stated, the word an iron-clad declaration that brooked no argument. He reached for her with immediate, intense possession. Seraphina's panic was total. She knew this was the moment of discovery. The moment he would reject her, too. Hysterical tears sprang to her eyes as she frantically pulled away, stammering out the label that defined her life. "No! Please, Your Majesty! I'm broken! I'm barren! Every alpha knows it, and every healer confirmed the defect!" Theron's fierce grip tightened, his wolf roaring dismissal of her desperate plea. He felt the pure right fit of the bond and dismissed her fear entirely. "Lies," he growled, his voice low and utterly authoritative. "Whatever flaws they claimed were their own weakness, not yours." Without waiting for her consent or a word from his stunned counsel, he swept the terrified Omega into his arms. He carried her quickly from the scene, his cloak swirling around them. Theron took her straight to the safety of his private residence within the keep. Settling her down, his silver eyes held a promise and a command. "You will not move. Now you will give me the full history of your abandonment and every detail of this supposed flaw, and I will prove them all wrong." Still trembling, but subdued by the king's overwhelming command, Seraphina recounted her painful history. She detailed the 3 brutal rejections and the subsequent visits to healers across the realm. She described the ambiguous findings, how her scent was pronounced too heavy, unbalanced, or off-key, leading all to the conclusion of infertility. Every word was a razor's edge of remembered shame. King Theron listened, his hand resting on the plush fur bedding as suggested by the image, his silver gaze unwavering. He did not need her story to believe her, but he needed the facts to dismantle the lie. He immediately summoned Sage, the keep's most ancient and powerful healer known for their deep knowledge of lost lore. Sage arrived and after a respectful bow began their examination. They didn't rely on modern instruments but studied Seraphina's aura and most crucially inhaled her true, unsuppressed scent. After a long moment of contemplation, Sage's eyes went wide with reverence. They pulled forth brittle, archaic scrolls confirming their suspicion. "Your Majesty, Luna Seraphina," Sage announced, their voice shaking with awe. "She is no mere Omega. She is a sovereign Omega, a primal, ancestral line designed for exceptional power and offspring. Her scent is not flawed, it is intensely potent and selective. Lesser alphas were simply too weak to perceive it correctly, misinterpreting their own lack of strength as her barrenness. The weight of the diagnosis, destined sovereign rather than broken outcast, struck Seraphina harder than any rejection. Her emotional wall, built for years on the lie of her worthlessness, began to fracture. She wasn't flawed. She was merely selective. The abandoned Omega was a destined queen, finally home. With the truth of the sovereign Omega revealed, King Theron refused to rush the mate bond. He knew Seraphina's deep-seated trauma required more than just validation. It needed time to heal. He began a slow, respectful courtship, focusing entirely on her emotional well-being. Theron moved her into a secure private wing of the keep, a room designed for comfort and peace, similar to the intimate setting captured in the image. Theron consistently demonstrated that his acceptance was unconditional, divorcing her worth entirely from the concept of fertility or political use. He spent hours with her, not discussing the crown, but learning about the woman beneath the servant's past. Seraphina, dressed in simple, soft linen, like the muted dress in the image, hesitantly began to open up. She revealed her long hidden love of studying ancient, forgotten histories and her quiet joy in observing the winter landscape outside the keep. Their connection deepened into true partnership, built on shared respect and burgeoning affection. Theron's trusted inner council watched this unprecedented change in their solitary king. They were fiercely protective and initially suspicious of the unknown Omega with the scandalous history. However, seeing the genuine care and profound patience Theron exhibited, traits they rarely saw, began to sway them. They recognized that Seraphina brought a necessary calmness and hope to the Silver King. Though still wary of the political fallout, they offered Seraphina their cautious acceptance, a silent acknowledgement that the former abandoned Omega might be the only Luna strong enough for the Northern Realm. Seraphina finally found a safe place to breathe and trust. The fragile peace of Seraphina's healing was shattered when news of her elevated status reached the outer territories. Alpha Darius, the Alpha who had cast her aside most cruelly, suddenly arrived at the keep, demanding an audience with the king's mate. His goal was transparent: to backtrack on his rejection and reclaim Seraphina now that she was unexpectedly valuable. Seraphina, though her hands trembled, refused to hide. She met Darius alone in a small parlor, her spine straighter than it had ever been. Darius launched into a smooth, practiced apology, claiming he'd been confused by the scent and could overlook her past now that she was under Theron's protection. Seraphina cut him off, her voice low and steady. "You did not overlook a flaw, Alpha Darius," she asserted, the truth of the sovereign Omega giving her strength. "You simply lack the power to recognize the rare destiny before you." With those words, she placed her hand on his, a move he hadn't expected, and with a deep breath, formally rejected and severed the mate bond. A sharp, almost painful snap resonated only between them, the final closure of years of torment, and Seraphina felt a staggering surge of her own, untouched power. At that exact moment, the great door slammed open. King Theron strode in, his eyes blazing silver with predatory, protective fury. He had scented the confrontation and Darius's deceitful intent. Seeing Seraphina standing tall but shaken, Theron's attention locked onto the former rejecter. "You dared to attempt reclaiming what you were never worthy of." Theron's voice was deadly calm, radiating authority. "Leave this keep now, and understand this boundary. Anyone who speaks disrespectfully to or attempts to touch my Luna will forfeit their life. That is the final consequence." Theron's protective declaration cemented his absolute belief in Seraphina, confirming she was now a queen with untouchable status. With the ghosts of the past finally banished, Seraphina felt a profound peace and readiness. She accepted Theron's full claim, and they prepared for the final ritual. In a private, intimate ceremony held in their cozy, candlelit chamber, reminiscent of the scene in the image, they completed the mate bond. The joining was an overwhelming fusion of their souls, a pulse of shimmering silver light, unique to the sovereign Omega and Silver King, enveloped them both. As the bond locked into place, Seraphina experienced a dizzying transformation. The flow of power she had sensed earlier solidified, and she realized the completion of the bond had unlocked her latent gift, the essence conduit. She could literally feel the vital life force radiating from the earth, the surrounding trees, and most potently, from Theron himself. She understood instantly how to draw, channel, and direct this power. The answer to the barrenness lie was not only a destiny, but a rare ability to nurture life. Barely 2 months later, Sage, the ancient healer, confirmed what Theron had already sensed. Seraphina was pregnant. The joy was immense, but the news that followed surpassed all expectations and entered the realm of myth. Sage revealed that Seraphina was carrying not one, but the first twin Alpha sons, who were already named Aeron and Kael, in over 300 years of recorded history. The abandoned Omega, declared Barren, had achieved the most incredible feat. but the miracle instantly cast a long, fearful shadow of prophecy over the northern keep. The joy over the miraculous pregnancy was instantly eclipsed by terror. Sage, the ancient healer, returned to the court with grim news, confirming that the birth of twin Alpha sons, Aeron and Kael, was not merely a miracle but an event tied to a catastrophic 300-year-old dark prophecy. When the silent star bears the Silver King's heirs, the realm shall find its end or a new dawn. The last twin Alpha birth had triggered a brutal civil war that nearly shattered the kingdom, and the council feared history was set to repeat itself. The Council of Elders, paralyzed by this historical fear, convened immediately. They viewed the pregnancy not as a blessing, but as a dire threat. Several prominent members vehemently pushed King Theron to consider the unthinkable, terminating the pregnancy to secure the realm's stability. Seraphina, now firmly established as the Luna, stood before the terrified council. She used her new voice and alpha mate status to fiercely defend her son's right to live. "My children are not a curse," she declared, her sovereign Omega strength radiating. "They will not be sacrificed to your fear. They will be raised to choose unity. We will defy the prophecy and demand they bring forth a new dawn." However, the threat was not only political. As the twins grew, their enormous alpha power began to place an unsustainable drain on Seraphina. She started experiencing severe exhaustion, collapsing spells, and fatal weakness. The powerful pregnancy was actively and fatally draining her life force, putting both Seraphina and the heirs in imminent peril. The time for demanding a new dawn was quickly running out. Seraphina's condition deteriorated rapidly. Lying weak and pale, she was truly on the brink of death, the relentless drain of the twin alphas threatening to snuff out her life and theirs. Doctors could do nothing. The problem was one of essence, not ailment. Gazing at the resolute face of King Theron, who refused to leave her side, Seraphina realized that her latent ability was her only chance. Her essence conduit gift was the only answer, the sovereign power she was destined to wield. With Theron's hand tightly in hers, Seraphina focused inward. This was a complex, life-risking feat. She had to channel the power not just outward but inward upon herself. She deliberately reached out with her conduit, tapping into the boundless vital life force of the earth beneath the keep and drawing deeply from the pure, steady strength of Theron's mate bond. She began the multiplication. She didn't just transfer energy. She focused the raw essence, amplifying her own dwindling reserves to create a sustainable flow for the two demanding lives inside her. It was agonizing, a battle of wills against exhaustion. As the power took hold, a subtle, powerful golden-silver light began to emanate from Seraphina's body, momentarily illuminating the dark corners of the room. This ethereal glow, faintly visible even in the dim candlelight of the setting, as suggested by the image's atmosphere, confirmed her choice for life. The drain stopped. Seraphina stabilized, her strength returning in a controlled surge. She had successfully channeled her destiny, proving that the Omega they called Barren was, in fact, the ultimate sustainer of life. The labor was long and brutal, a final, immense struggle between the powerful sovereign Omega and her two Alpha heirs. Seraphina endured hours of agony in her private chamber, relying heavily on the residual strength of her essence conduit gift for every push. King Theron remained a constant, powerful presence, a rock of strength at her side, his silver wolf howling encouragement and support, oblivious to his royal dignity. Outside the thick stone walls of the keep, the nervous tension of the kingdom manifested physically. The northern wolves gathered on the surrounding hills, their collective howls forming a protective chorus that spanned the hours, calling for the safe passage of the prophesied heirs. Finally, after a final, desperate surge of channeled power, the first twin was born, Aeron, the heir embodying the king's intensity. Moments later, the second twin followed, Kael, carrying the quiet strength and light of his mother. They were both strong and healthy, defying the fatal warnings of the pregnancy. The most iconic and crucial moment came afterward. Exhausted but triumphant, Seraphina held her newborns, perfectly captured by the image. A devoted mother with her two swaddled sons, beside her powerful mate. When the two infant alphas were placed close together, they didn't push or snarl in alpha rivalry. Instead, their tiny hands instinctively reached out, fingers intertwining in a silent, profound gesture. This act, this innate choice of connection over competition, was the first definitive sign the anxious kingdom needed. The prophecy of doom was not inevitable. The twin heirs had chosen salvation, proving the abandoned Omega was indeed the catalyst for the realm's new dawn. 6 years later, the Northern Keep was no longer a fortress of solitude, but a home filled with the energy of a thriving family. Luna Seraphina and King Theron stood on the battlements, watching their twin sons, Aeron and Kael, flourish in the training yard below. Aeron, the firstborn, showed the calm, strategic mind of a leader, directing scenarios with keen insight. Kael, the younger, moved with restless warrior energy, always protecting his brother's flank. They were complementary partners in every game. As the boys neared the age where the inevitable political question of succession had to be addressed, the council prepared for tense negotiations. But the twins had been listening, learning, and leading differently since birth. In a formal court session, Aeron and Kael, now nearly 6, walked in hand. They presented their parents and the astonished council with their solution. They formally rejected the single blood-stained throne. Instead, they announced they would rule from a council table side by side, sharing the weight of the crown and ensuring permanent unity. Their decision was a deliberate, powerful act to break the 300-year-old cycle of conflict and fear tied to the prophecy. Seraphina watched with unshed tears of triumph. Her personal journey was complete. The barren exile, deemed worthless and abandoned, was now the sovereign Omega who gave the realm its greatest hope. She had not only survived, but she had birthed the twin alphas who chose partnership over rivalry, definitively ushering in a new dawn for the Northern Realm. The lie of her barrenness had become the magnificent truth of her destiny. That completes your 9-chapter outline. Do you need help expanding any of these chapters further, or perhaps starting the writing process from the beginning?